Dr. Hunar has PhD in neuroscience in University of Cambridge, and he will talk about one of the most hotly debated subject, which is intelligence. We will try our best to answer the questions that you might have encountered in your mind, or the ones that you will ask by the end of the lecture. Hope you get benefit and hope you enjoy it. Now, the stage is yours.
Hello again. So today's topic will be on intelligence. Before I talk about intelligence, I will try to brief you about a bit of my background so that you trust me more. So basically, I finished medical school, Hawler Medical University in 2009. And I practiced as a medical doctor in various urban hospitals for 2 to 3 years. And I have dealt with many patients, including neurological cases. Then I realized that neurological cases are too complex for my taste, and I wanted to know more about the basics. So neuroscience was a good path for me because it's a basic science, and it tries to answer the questions that are currently riddling us. So I did my master's degree in Edinburgh University, and then I followed up with a PhD degree. So most of my work was, I was working with functional MRI. I was looking at brain signals, and my PhD project was on memory, how human memory forms, and how do we retrieve information. So this topic is very, very related to intelligence. Obviously, if you can't learn, you can't have intelligence. And then currently I'm the head of research department at Ministry of Health, Kurdistan Regional Government. I hope that by now you realize that I'm somewhat qualified to talk about this topic. So hopefully it will be beneficial for us. Most of my previous presentations were usually for a technical group, for postgraduate on a very technical subject. So I have to say this is the first time that I'm presenting a broad and a general topic, which gives me a lot of freedom how to format my presentation. So the way I wanted to format my presentation was telling a story. It's not a traditional format by starting with introduction, then body and conclusion. I'm just gonna tell you a story according to my experience and according to what I learned from my life about how brain works and how it produces what we call intelligence, if that's the term. Although there is no consensus about how people define this term, but we will try to understand something. So the way I want to try to, sorry, I have two screens, so I have to switch my head a lot. So the way the way I want to tell you the story was to start from brain, because the brain is where intelligence resides. And then once we understood a bit about the brain, and then we go to learning. Learning is a process when you adapt yourself to new information so that you can survive your environment. And then we can then talk about intelligence. Intelligence is somewhat related to learning. If you can't learn, you can't have intelligence. So I can't talk directly about intelligence before talking about brain and learning and intelligence. I understand that you had some questions. You expect from me to answer you these questions, whether intelligence is inherited or can we actively change its dimensions? What are different theories of intelligence? Can we create a human level intelligence? So you are expecting from me to answer these questions. I will tell you the story, and by the end, we will come back to these questions, try to see if we can answer these questions. So let's start the story about the brain. Brain was a mysterious organ since a very long time. I mean, people didn't know anything about the brain. It's the most puzzling organ. Like more than 100 years ago, even the ancient Greek, which they are very intelligent people in mathematics, they didn't know what the brain is doing. And in fact, many of these ancient philosophers, they thought that the fluid inside our brain, inside the ventricles, are actually responsible for thinking. It was like that. Nobody knew about the brain. In fact, many things that our brain doing was attributed to heart, because heart is a very noisy organ. It beeps loudly every time when you are in love, in stress, in thinking. Your heart just start to beep, and then as a human being, you start to correlate things together. You say, oh, my heart is beeping while I am in stress, so heart is doing the stress. While in fact your brain does a lot of things, but it does it silently. So I'm not a cardiologist. So if you want to talk about heart, you should bring a cardiologist to talk about heart. But I'm here to talk about the brain and tell you that there are so many things that brain does it silently. I guess not so silently, given the fact that brain is actually controlling my mouth and many other mouths to talk about itself. But it presents itself not like heart. So as I told you, many people didn't know what brain is. They just thought this brain is a walnut-like thing, is a fatty thing, until nearly 100 years ago, when this brilliant scientist, who is a Spanish scientist, his name is Ramon y Cajal. This scientist also tried to use the microscope by looking at brain slides. So I guess like if you are second stage medical students, one of your subjects is histology, when you are probably looking at brain slides. This science was very sharp. Imagine that this is drawing probably ages more than 100 years ago. He probably used a microscope that's way worse than today's microscope. And look at it. This is just one single neuron. Look at it, how he drew it, and look at all these all these connections. So these are the structures that he drew while looking at the microscope. As you can see, the way he saw the brain is not like a walnut, a fatty thing. He saw a network, a big network of many countless neurons with many branches. Everything connected to each other. So the view of the brain changed radically. It became a network. So the brain before Ramon y Cajal was just a walnut-like structure, but after Ramon y Cajal, it's like 100 billions and 100 trillions of synapses. So the brain is way more powerful after this brilliant scientist gave us insights that the brain is a huge network. It's not just something fatty. So this is the basic functional unit of neurons. We are built on cells, and cells came in different varieties. Typically, what you see a cell is a circular thing. It has a nucleus and plasma and a lot of stuff. But neurons have a lot of branches, that it has one elongated branch, we call it axon, and this branch connects to other neurons, and it has other smaller, shorter branch, we call it dendrites, which receives information from other neurons. So they all together, I'm not gonna go into the details of what's the structure of this neuron, because I am sure in your physiology book you will read many chapters about the structure of this neuron. You will read about sodium ion channels, potassium ion channels. You will read a lot about how this single cell works. But for me, this is not very important right now. For me, I want to tell you that you can visualize, you can see a neuron just like a signal conveyor. It's just like takes a signal and sends it to something else. So that's the most important thing. How does it do it? It's a very detailed topic in your physiology book, which there is no time to talk about, and there is not very important. It doesn't contribute too much to our talk. In fact, intelligence is an emergent phenomena. You can only understand intelligence and learning if you understand how a group of neurons working together, not what one individual single neuron. So just like you can't understand water if you study oxygen and hydrogen, because when oxygen and hydrogen combine together, something new emerges, a new character emerges. So that if you want to understand water, you need to study water. You need to study hydrogen and oxygen combined together, not alone. Neurons is just like that. Intelligence, learning, all the types of information processing, they all happens when neurons come together. A single neuron can't do anything. Let me show you a video, like a small video that we have created to show you like how can you see the brain in action. So while you are now listening to me, your brain is constantly doing that. Billions of neurons in your network, they just send signals and they are connected to each other. They are connected to your eyes, to your nose, to your ears. They are connected to everything, even through my spinal cord. They are connected to my hands. They control my actions. And every time when they do that, let me show you again, because this is a very important picture. It's just like electrical signals comes, and so it's like an information network. It just one neuron. The job of one neuron is just sending signals, a signal to you, a signal to you, a signal to you, and then once other neurons, they receive the signal, they will send it to other neurons, and other neurons send it to other neurons, and all their job was just they send signals. That's all what they do, which is amazing, because you will ask, then why I do hate, love, learn, I have intelligence? I mean, is that all just signals comes together? So that's a very, very important question, and we are still thinking about that. But just keep in your mind that this is what your brain does constantly. Interestingly, back then when Raymond found that brain is a big network, at that time, many scientists from the engineering background, the engineers, they were using what's called Boolean gates. And these Boolean gates are transistors and diodes. They are just like a network. They connected through wires, and they send signals to each other. And these diodes, just like neurons, either prevent the signal from going, inhibits the signal, just like inhibitory neurons, or stimulates other diodes, like sends the signal to other diodes. So back then, people were engineering diodes and transistors together, connecting them through wires, and making these units to compute anything that you want, in fact, any equation, anything. Even your calculator is based on that, actually. So that's an interesting thing, because back then people thought that, okay, we can design these units, these Boolean units. We can just connect diodes together, and we can design functions that calculate square root of numbers for us, that calculate anything for us. So maybe we understood the brain, because the brain is also a network connected together. But the big question is that, who actually connects the brain together? Is there an engineer inside our brain when we learn something? Because as a child, when you're born to the world, you know nothing. Your brain is an adaptable organ. So let's say if we connect your brain, the neurons inside your brain, to understand language, English language, then, well, in that case, if you are born into a Kurdish community, you will not understand anything, because your brain is designed to, the network inside your brain is connected in a way just to understand English language. So that doesn't work. So your brain needs to be adaptable. The network inside the brain is different from this network, which is engineered, because this network is fixed. Once the engineer connects these diodes together, it can't change them. but your brain can change itself. It can change the network. If you are born in a Kurdish community, you will learn Kurdish language. If you are born in an English community, you will learn English language. So basically, that's the important characteristic of learning rather than designing, because it will make you adaptable. If you go to any environment, you will learn the things that you need in that environment. In fact, your immunity system is just like that. Our immunity system hasn't defined all the viruses inside our body. As you know, coronavirus is a new virus to our body, the COVID-19. I am talking about COVID-19. And it was not defined inside your body, because your immunity, just like your brain, is an adaptable organ. It can't define every virus, every mutation, every variation of virus and microbes in the world. So it tries to learn. It tries to learn new definitions. And your brain is just like that. So being adaptable is useful, is more useful than being fixed. So that's the big difference. I really want to stress on that again. So these are gating units. They can compute anything if you connect these wires in a way. So let's recap about the structure of the brain. The brain has around 100 billion neurons, and each neuron on average has 1,000 connections. Brain is a network of 100 trillion synapses. Neurons talk to each other through electrical signals and neurotransmitters. The speed of signal passage from one neuron to another is 90 meters per second. So basically, in conclusion, brain is a huge network, that tries to maximize our survival through processing the sensory information and optimal actions. This process of optimization is called learning, which is our next topic. So learning. Learning is a process of optimization. How do we optimize this network? Obviously, we should have a principle. As I told you, it's not designed inside our brain. The principle is designed inside our brain. So that principle, which we want to understand, the principle controls how neurons connect to each other and how they can adapt. To simplify things, from now on, I will show you this illustration. You can think of this as a neural network. So these circles are neuronal bodies, and these connections, these lines between them are connections between the neurons. So if the line is thick, it means that the synaptic connection between neurons are strong. So by synaptic connections, I didn't tell you that in the brain structure. By synaptic connection, I mean the end of one neuron to another neuron have connected strongly, whether the synapse has a wider surface area or more synapses connected to one neuron. So basically, if you see the line is thicker, it means that these two nodes are connected stronger together. But if you saw, for example, this line is thinner, it means these two nodes are connected weakly together. I mean, they don't talk together. They don't send signals to each other. But the ones that have strong connections with each other, they send signals to each other. So you can think of it as a selective network where the neurons selectively choose which one to give a signal and which neuron not send a signal to it. Okay, so these networks are easily built inside our computer. In fact, I can easily build these neurons inside my computer. So if I can share, so do you see a program right now? Am I right?
Yes.
Okay, so this program is, I actually created this program just to let you know that this is very, very easy. You just give the computer some instruction, and then let's say I tell the computer to build for me 10 neurons. So generate graph, it just builds for me 10 neurons, and then it connects every neuron to each other. So this is the easiest thing that you can do in inside computers, and then you can stimulate these neurons to fire. So every time I push the next button, this neuron fires and sends signals to this neuron, and this neuron fires and sends the signal to this neuron. So the question here is what's the use of this network? Okay, I built this network. It looks like the brain. I mean, obviously it looks like a very, very simplified brain with only 10 neurons, not 100 billion neurons. And these neurons are very simple. Their job only sends signals. They don't have any sodium channels and stuff like that, which are biologically necessary, not necessary for computers. But this network doesn't do anything useful. The reason is because the connections are just randomly connected to each other. The neurons are just randomly connected to each other. So if I want to do something that this network does something useful for me, for example, if I input 1, I want this network to output 2. If I input 3, I want this network to output 4. So I want this network to add for me. If I want to do that, I need to make this network learn. And the way I want to make this network learn is by changing the connections. So I need to make this connection weaker. I want to make this connection stronger. So how can I do that? How should I know what to do? The process of doing that is called learning. It's called adapting. So as I told you, there is 2 ways to do that. Either designing, which I really don't know how to design a network to add 1 to each number, and then learning from your environment. This is the easy one, because you can make there are some very famous algorithms, which I'm going to talk about. They can make this network learn just by seeing the environment, just by seeing the signals from the surroundings. So let me share back my presentation. Okay, so can you see my slides again? Am I right?
Yes, we
Okay.
can see it.
So there are so many algorithms, but the 3 most famous one, or the 3 most which I really encountered a lot, and I know something about them. One of them is called genetic algorithm. So genetic algorithm is similar to genetic selections. You have biological background, you know that we are subjected to genetic selections. And let me show you this illustration, which I took it from the internet. So you can see like the mice here, some of them have a color that's very similar to the surroundings. So the predator here can see them. So most likely the predator takes the ones that have bright color. So these variations among the animals happens due to the mutations to their DNA. Just like my face is different from somebody else's face, mice is also different from each other. Some have stronger color, some have brighter color, some are stronger, some are. And these variations, then natural selection will select the ones that are more prone to the predator. So basically, in the third picture, you see that most of the population now are dark color, because dark color is protective. I mean, the predator can't see them. So what we can say here, we can say that population learned. So individually, none of the mice, no mouse learned anything. But as a population, the mice population actually learned. So genetic algorithm is a learning algorithm for for population, not for individuals. And it does that by making new variations and selecting the best, selecting the ones that are fit and can survive the environment. We can use this algorithm to make our neural network learn, actually. So the way we can do that, so maybe we can have a network, and initially I am randomly just making these connections, and then I make some copies from this network. I mean, just like this network breeds and have more copies, and in each copy I make a selection, a random mutation. And by random mutation, I mean I make some connections stronger and some connections brighter, some connections weaker. And then I will test these networks and see which one is better. So I mean, let's say if I want this network to add, if I input 1, it should output 2 for me. And let's say this network outputted a number that is close to 2. But the other two networks, they output a number that is way far from 2. So what I'm gonna do is, even though none of these networks can currently output 2 for me, but I will say, oh, this one is a bit closer to my needs. So I will choose this one, and then I will select that to breed again, to make mutations from that again. So if I do this process again and again and again, just copying networks and then mutating them and then selecting the best, finally the network is actually able to do the job for me. So let me just give you a demo. So this is a task, like I want a network to learn to balance this card pull for me. So if you currently see that, you can see it can't balance. It falls over. So I want to use genetic algorithms to make my network learn so that it forces this. So you need to have some forces. So currently the network is random. It just randomly forces this to left, right. It can't balance it. You can see it can't balance this card pull. Now I am gonna use the genetic algorithm, and I will show you how that genetic algorithm is actually work. In fact, the reason why I want to go to the details of genetic algorithm, because it's very simple. It's the one algorithm that doesn't have math in it. That's why I want to go a bit into the detail, because you are medical students and you are probably not very mathy. So this network does the same thing that I told you. It's just like I gave these instructions to the computer. I told them, make for me 6 neurons and then for 4 inputs, and basically the 4 inputs are the environmental observations. So the card pull have position, speed. So I need to give these environmental positions to this network, and then I'm randomly assigning values to these weights, and then I have a loop, 1,000 generations. So this 1,000 numbers means this loop will repeat 1,000 times. So each time it will mutate the weights. So by mutating, I'm just adding the random. So I'm instructing computer to add random numbers to these weights, just slightly change them. And then, okay. And then this line is the selection part. So I'm telling the computer, if the mutated network is better than the current one, please make the current one the mutated one. Please change them. So the same thing that I told you, but this is the computer instruction to do this. And once the computer does that for me, the network actually learns. And let me show you. So you see this graph is actually the performance. And you see with each generation, the performance was better and better. So once you, for example, see at the 25th generation, the network's performance is really good. So I'm gonna show you. So this is before learning. So before learning is this network can't hold this only for a couple seconds. It falls. But after learning, you can see it holds that for like 4 seconds, or even it can hold that even more, but I closed the duration of the video is short. So this is a live demonstration of how a genetic algorithm works. Now, genetic algorithm is not very interesting for your quest right now, because you want to understand learning and intelligence at individual level, not at population level. Because so basically genetic algorithm is slow, inefficient, and it's population-based learning. So if I want to make my brain learn that, I need to have a copy of many copies of my brain, and then select the brain that's better, that can do mathematics better, and then copy many brains from that. I mean, this is very inefficient, and it actually happens. Our genes, you know, that we reproduce, we have children, and our children. So the genetic selections already goes on, but and our brain already adapts. It becomes better, worse, according to the environments. I mean, being intelligence is not all the time is good. Sometimes if you are too intelligent, you may be socially awkward, you may be isolated from other people. So genetic selections are not always in favor of intelligence. So, but this kind of intelligence, because it's easy, I want to talk about it a bit. Otherwise, this is not interesting because it's a population-based learning. It requires populations. What we are interested is an algorithm that learns inside us as an individual. So let's come back to the second algorithm. The second algorithm is a very famous one. It's error feedback. It means that you learn from your errors. We all make mistakes in our life. So so if we want our brain to learn, if we want the network from the brain, we need to learn from the errors. In fact, most of the machine learning technologies, the artificial intelligence that you see nowadays on the internet are actually they're using this technique. So basically you have seen face recognition, you have seen voice recognition, you talk to your mobile, there is a chatbot inside your mobile talking to you, you see robots play games, you see a lot of things, and most of them, they are actually using this algorithm because it's currently the state of the art. The problem is this algorithm is a very, very complex one. It requires mathematics. It requires you to understand derivatives. But I'm going to simplify it to you I'm trying to give you an analogy that's very, very simple. So imagine your brain as a parliament. So, and the neurons inside your brain are parliament members. So each member here is a neuron. And each number have a voting power. So every time when a member votes, it means like it sends a signal. So if the member said yes, it means it sends the yes signal. If it says no, it means it sends inhibitory signal, no signal inside your brain. So this is a good analogy. The parliament is your brain, and the parliament members are neurons, and their decisions are signals. Let's say each person have voting power. Initially, we probably randomly assign their voting power, or we assign one to all their voting power. So let's say this person, when says anything about health, we just give it the voting power of 1 for economy, 1 for industry, 1 for education, or for anything. We just give every member a voting power of 1. So that means every time this person says yes, we give them +1. If says no, it means his voting power is -1. And then the voting power of the parliament is the summation of all the votes. So let's say this member said, yeah, let's say you do have a medical issue. You wanted the parliament to vote. You wanted to see if the parliament agrees to privatize your health system or not. And let's say some said yes, some said no. So if you sum their votes, if the summation is more than 0, it means that the parliament as a whole said yes. If it's less than 0, it means the parliament as a whole said no. Now let's come back to the error feedback. Let's say that the decision of privatizing health, the parliament said yes, we want to privatize a health system. And let's say it turned out this was really bad. Like after 2 years, your health system become worse. Everything becomes bad. So what you're gonna say? You're gonna say, oh, it means the parliament made a wrong decision. It should have said no to privatizing health system. Now, what you in that case, you come back. You will try to see the parliament members. Each one said yes. You want to penalize them. So let's say this person said yes to privatizing health, and you know this is a wrong decision. So you penalize his decision. You say no. Every time any health issue comes up, your voting power is half. So we multiply your voting power with a half. So every time you vote yes, we will multiply it with half because you don't know about health systems from experience. And let's say this person said yes, and you give it you triple his voting power because the privatizing health system was so determined, was so bad. So if you do that again and again, so if it's a feedback loop, every time a parliament made a decision on a topic, on education, and if the decision is good, you come back and you change the voting power of each members. You say, oh, your decision was good. I just add more voting power to you, and your decision is bad. So that's error feedback. That's the back propagation. And the way that you estimate how much you add, there is a function. Usually people who program these, they use the function, they use derivatives, they use mathematics to do that. I am not gonna go to the details, but simply it's as simple as that. So once you do that, you can say now you have a parliament that have learned. So every time an issue comes up, you tell the parliament yes or no, and then everybody says yes, no, and then when you combine the voting power of everybody, the parliament decision is really good. It means that your parliament has learned, because those people who know more, their votes are more impactful than those who didn't learn. So that's actually the learning algorithm, which is currently the state of the power. So basically you can do the same thing for a neural network. You can just, so if you give it the neural network an input, and then if the output was wrong, you just penalize the weights. You just penalize the weight of those nodes who said yes, or who give a positive signal. And then you give more over to neurons who give negative signal. So if you do that repeatedly, this network learns, and it doesn't need to copy, make generations, and it's really fast. So this is the second one. The problem with this algorithm is we still haven't found any evidence inside our brain that our brain does exactly like that. We really didn't see any evidence that our brain use calculus, use derivatives to calculate how much penalize the connections of neurons. And so this is still an active area of research. Like many scientists say, yes, the brain can do that. And we think that this algorithm is actually used by our brain to change the connections inside our brain, to make us learn, adapt to our environment, make good decisions, good yes and no decisions, intelligible decisions. There is another algorithm, the final one, and this one is biologically proven.
Actually, Doctor, before going to the other learning part, we have a question. It's related to the previous learning type. So, Bagadis asks, then who judges the right or wrong one in the brain? For example, we visualize that the nodes, they are neurons in the brain. So, who judges to make the penalizing connection between the neurons? If you can get me
so that's the question. Actually, that's the critic of this algorithm. So the critic of this algorithm is who does that. I mean, because inside computers, people who design these algorithms, they use mathematics to penalize them. Like they say, because this let's say we input something to this network, and the output was yes, and it turned out that the output is wrong. The network should have said no. So where the algorithm, what does, it says, oh, this connection is strong, and this neuron said yes, so I am gonna penalize this a lot, because the amount of penalization is relative to the amount of how much the connection is stronger. If it's stronger, it penalizes it more. So just like saying, if the parliament made a really big mistake, we should penalize them, the parliament members, more. But if the decision was slightly wrong, I mean, was not that big wrong, we know wrong, but not very wrong, we penalize them less. So the algorithm does that. But as you said, how does the brain does that? I mean, how does it calculates the errors? We don't know really. I mean, some scientists say yes, and they make a lot of connections, feedback connections from the brain. So they say these loopy feedback connections, because inside our brain there are also neurons connected to themselves, and they connect to lower layers. So they say like these feedback connections, they give us an estimation about how much error happens. But I mean, we still don't know. So the answer to your questions, we don't know. We don't know what inside our brain does that. It's area under research. Let's come to Hebbian learning. Hebbian learning is simple. It's actually it's proposed by someone called Donald Hebb in 1940s, so a long time ago. This guy says, it says like neurons that fire together wire together. A simple rule, a very, very simple rule. It just says like, if two, how can I decide two neurons should strongly connect? If they fire together a lot, if that neuron fire and that neuron also fires at the same time, then they should be connected together. And if they didn't fire together at the same time, they shouldn't be connected. So that's the rule. That's the easy rule. You simply says that your brain does that. The neurons inside your brain does that. The synapses become weaker. So physiologically, it may be complex to explain it right now, but just take my word for it. Neurons that fire together wire together, or the connections become stronger. Neurons that don't fire, they don't connect together. Let me give you a demo like how this thing may work. I mean, let's say you do have this network, these neurons connect to each other, and these neurons are your inputs, or your expectation, and these neurons are what happens in the environment. Let me give you an example. Let's say that this neuron is encoding the concept of like Barcelona. Barcelona is a good football team, and this neuron encodes the concept of winning. Like every time something wins, this neuron fires, and every time you hear the word Barcelona, this neuron fires because this neuron encodes Barcelona. So in your mind, every time you say Barcelona, you want to connect that with winning. So this neuron is the fact, like what you see by your eyes, a winning. Let's say that every time Barcelona happens, winning also happens. But in this case, you see that these neurons are not connected together. So you can't, your brain here can't predict that Barcelona can win, because it's not connected to the winning neuron. But if these neurons happens together a lot and a lot, so let's say this neuron was a losing neuron, so this connection will become weaker, and with time this connection will become stronger. So as I said, neurons that fire together wire together, because Barcelona and winning fires a lot together. Like these two events happens a lot together. So the neurons that encode these two things, they wire together. By the way, I'm not a fan of any club, any football club, but this example works for any football club team, for anything actually. It just tells you how can our brain learns new things. How can I predict? But basically, learning means that my predictions comes true. So from now on, if somebody tells me Barcelona, I will say, oh, Barcelona will win, because winning happens a lot. Statistically, winning and Barcelona happens a lot together. So it makes sense that your brain makes a strong connections between these two neurons. And it makes a lot of sense that your brain makes a weaker connection between Barcelona and losing. But let's say that the world changed. Now Barcelona loses a lot. So what happens to your brain? Now your brain, because the neuron that wins doesn't fire a lot with Barcelona, so the connections become weaker now, the connection. So I hope you understand that your brain is adaptable. It will change, and it will make you predict better in the future. I don't know if my example was clear or not, but simply take my word for that. Neurons that fire together wire together, and if you do that, your network become adaptable. So let's say these two neurons fire together a lot. It makes two connections to this neuron. Now, a big problem here. Let's go back to Hebbian learning. Although it's we know the evidence, we know there is evidence inside our brain. We actually, Neuroscience, they measured neurons and they found that one neuron, if you stimulate one neuron a lot, and then if you stimulate two neurons together a lot, you will see that these neurons make connections. So there is evidence. The problem is that these are very difficult to implement inside computers, especially when your network grows a lot, when you use thousands of neurons. And to my experience, like, there are currently no powerful Hebbian learning algorithm that can beat the error feedback, the previous algorithm which I talked about. It's powerful, but it's just not as powerful as that, which is strange, because we know this our brain works like that. So it means that we still don't understand something. There must be something more than Hebbian learning. There must be something else, and that thing we still haven't found it. In fact, one of my research area, and I work with some others, is currently to find out what else to make Hebbian learning powerful, more powerful than error feedback. And currently we are onto a novel algorithm. We call it predictive Hebbian unified neurons, and the acronym is short for FUN. And this, I can't disclose more about this algorithm because it's currently under development and under research, but our initial testing shows that it can be more powerful than the back propagation, and it's definitely more efficient. And once we finish that, we will try to release it for free on www.brainxyz.com. So you can watch that. It's currently under development, not released, but once released, it will be available for free. And back then, I will put on the website more information about how this algorithm works. But so far, we still do not have an algorithm that works just like human brain. But they are close. They are really good. They can play some games, but they are not creative. You know, humans are really creative. We invent things. These networks can learn, but they can't. So they have learning ability, but still they have not intelligence. So that's a good point to come to intelligence. Let's talk about intelligence, because intelligence is built upon learning. So in a nutshell, intelligence for me is a simple form, sorry for the mistake, spelling error. So it's a simple, is a compressed form of learning. And what I mean by that, by saying a compressed form of learning. So let's say you do have two networks. So this network have fewer neurons, fewer connections. And let's say these two neurons, networks, they did the same thing as effectively as each other. Let's say the example that I showed you, balancing the card pool. Let's say these two networks, they did the same job as effectively as each other. Then you would say which network is more intelligent? You would have to say that the smaller network is more intelligent, because it does the same thing with a much less power, with fewer neurons, fewer connections. So doing more with less is more intelligent. So I will give you more concrete examples, but take this word from me. Doing more with less resources, it means that you have a compressed form of learning. Yeah, I mean, you can generalize. How do you predict this sine wave goes? What's your prediction for this sine wave to go? Is it the red line, or is it the green line, or is it the yellow line? So can you answer me? What do you think it happens here based on these informations?
Of course, the red line.
The red line, the red line. So I have to tell you, this is intelligence. I mean, you don't recognize it as an intelligent behavior, but the intelligence is to predict the future, to predict what is. Now I have to tell you why you haven't said green and yellow. I will tell you why you didn't say. Even that we sometimes can't express ourselves, but I cannot tell you, and I will relate back that to the compressed learning way. So let me show you a different example. So if I tell you 1 become 1, 2 become 4, 3 become 9, 4 become 16. Now, if I say let me.
5, 25.
Oh, okay. But let's say what do you think 2 is become? You already saw 2 is 4, so you memorized that. You memorized that. Uh, you can use your memory to say that 2 becomes 4 because you learned that. But that's not extrapolation. Sorry, I'm messing up with. So basically, let me say you memorized that, and then I hide 4, and I say well what 2 becomes. You already saw 4, you memorized that, and you learned that. But basically, you learned that the brain networks have already memorized that and learned that. Now, if I tell you what 5 becomes, somebody already answered me 25. Now, if you based your prediction, so this is extrapolation. It's an ugly word, but it's very useful. What you have done is called extrapolation. It means that you generalized your knowledge. Now, how you were able to do that? You did a compressed form of learning. So what you did, you didn't memorize that. If you have memorized that, you can't predict that 5 becomes 25. But what you already did, you thought about the problem, you found a solution, so you only memorized a rule. You memorized a rule. So this is a compressed form of learning. You just said, oh, x multiplied by x. So nowadays, you don't need to memorize everything. You don't need to memorize all these things. You just need to memorize this one. So you get my point? Intelligence is a compressed form of learning. It's a very, very crushed down form of learning. So if you want to become intelligence, you need to make your learn more compressed. You need to find common rules that are connecting everything together. Because if you do that, you will be able to extrapolate. Most of the IQ tests are actually based on extrapolation and interpolation. They just give you examples and visual and auditory examples, and your job is to extrapolate, to predict what happens. And the way, if you want to do that correctly, you have to learn the rules, a compressed form of learning. So you have to use less neurons inside your brain, but more connections. Not more neurons, but less connections. I will give you more concrete examples. So basically, when you told me this, you actually even without realizing, you just made a rule. You said the rule is like, if it goes up, it goes down. If it goes up, it goes down. If it goes down, it goes up. So basically, you just memorized this rule without realizing. And then that's why you told me it goes up. So we are visually very intelligent. Humans visually very intelligent. They do that even without feeling. So it's very, very seamless. So how we can learn efficiently? Try to make less recruitment of new neurons. So you have a lot of neurons inside your brain. So you can recruit any neuron. If you want to memorize anything, you can do that, but try not to do that. The reason, because if you recruit a new neuron for, let's say, if you find a new face, and if you recruit a new neuron, then you have to encode all the characteristics of this face, have big nose, small eyes, something like that. You have to encode all these, and all these you need to have more neurons to encode the information. The problem is that these neurons are probably not connected very well to other neurons. But if you make similarity, if you say, oh, this face looks like this actor, so you make more connections now, less neurons, more connections, because your brain will use the features from that actor, and that just makes connections to that other neurons. So makes more connections, less neurons. It makes you to generalize better. So one way to do that, I would say you have to be able to answer why question, not what question. So every time you read a big anything, you just try to answer why question, because why question, it tries to use your already previous information. It tries to connect the new information to the already previous connections. Once you do that, it borrows all the information back to you. Let me give you more examples. So basically, this is the standard book in your, I guess like in fourth stage, you will be reading about Davidson's Principle of Medicine. It's a very famous book in Hawler Medical University. So what I'm going to tell you, try to learn a compressed form of this book. Not, and by a compressed form, I don't mean removing the words just like, or highlighting the important words just like everybody does it. I want you to connect the information that you learn from this book to the already known information that you have in your background, in your life. You learned a lot. Try to make connections. And once you do connections, the amount of neurons that has to be recruited to memorize this book or to learn this book is way, way smaller than if you just memorize everything. If you just memorize them. Let me give you another concrete example, which I really like. It's a heart-related example, which that's I don't like. I wanted to have a brain-related example, but brains are still complex. We still don't know a lot about the brain. That's why we memorize a lot of things. But one thing that, one topic that's very interesting, you will read about it in your 4th stage and 5th stage. So you know, heart have valves. And if some problem happens to a valve, let's say your left side, the valve in the left side of your heart have problems. What happens is the right side, left side heart failure happens. Left side heart failure, it means that left side is not pushing the blood correctly. It just fails. Now, what happens as a consequence? So you in here, you use your knowledge. If fails, the pressure increase. Now you use your anatomical knowledge. You know that left side is connected to your lung, so through the pulmonary branch. You know, if the pressure increases in the pulmonary artery, and then what happens? The pressure increases inside your lung. What happens there? Fluid accumulates inside your lung, and so this is all your knowledge, your existing knowledge. And then what happens is someone fluid happens inside, become dizzy, and doesn't want to lie down because the fluid accumulates. It wants to stand. You need to put more pillows behind his head. So many informations you can extrapolate just based on a simple knowledge that if a pressure increase is inside a closed space, just by using your common sense knowledge. So my point is that you can compress all this. You can compress that just by relating what happens to your already previous knowledge, not just by memorizing what happens in left side heart failure. You just memorize, oh, dyspnea, orthopnea, paroxysmal. So lots of things that you need to memorize. And then once you graduate from medicine, if most of the patients are not typical, they are not like your textbook. If somebody comes to you with different symptoms, you can't extrapolate because you just memorized the book. You didn't learn the rules. So try to answer the why question, because if you say the why question, I want to go back to that slide, because if you say why question, you make more connections. If you answer the why question, you make more connections between the neurons inside your brain. If you memorize, you recruit more neurons. So you assign more neurons to different topics. Even if you assign neurons to different topics, still try to connect them to your previous knowledge. Because if you do that, you will be able to generalize. If you are able to generalize, you will be able to extrapolate and interpolate. If you do that, you will be good at IQ tests, because IQ test is mostly based on extrapolation and interpolation. So that's intelligence, and that's what I think most science think intelligence is, though there are so many definitions, but basically that's it. Okay, so in the beginning, you gave me some questions. I just want to cover these questions quickly. So is intelligence inherited? Of course, intelligence is inherited. Some people are more intelligent just because of genetical variation. I told you the genetic algorithm, variations happens from human to human, but this variation is too small to be significant. So don't, if you get bad scores in medicine, don't say that I have inherited less intelligence. Most probably you get bad score because you spend a lot of time on Instagram and TikTok, not because you inherited, because this variation is too small to be significant. It is there. There is variation, just like people have, some people are taller, some people are, there is variation, but these variations are not significant. Now, can we actively change dimension? Yes. If you are a child, the child brain is very plastic. The neurons are very actively making connections. They are so if you are a child can learn a lot and become intelligent if you give them a lot of tasks to solve. So it will train. Obviously, a child who's grew up in a very stimulant environment becomes more intelligent than a child who grew up in a deprived environment. But even if you grow up, you can still. I'm sure. It's my opinion. Though many people say, like, once you grow up, your ability to learn new things become less. But if you connect, because there are still parts of our brain become plastic, like hippocampus. Hippocampus is a brain region that still encodes new memories. Otherwise, I can't remember this seminar presentation. So, but most of my brain become fixed, but there are some regions, neurons, that still make connections. And if you want to become more intelligent, still make more connections. I still answer the why question, not the what question. Obviously, you have to answer the what question as well, but try to put more weight on why question, because usually answering why questions, it means that you are reconnecting the new stuff with the already learned stuff. And once you connect that, it means that all your previous knowledge is at your hand to use. Can we create human level intelligence? We still don't know the answer to that. The future, I talked about some different algorithms, different theories that tells us how we can make a network to learn, but we are still can't make them compressed. We still can't make them to predict very, very new things in the environment. So a robot can learn to balance a carpool, but once you take this robot to a very challenging environment, it just fails. It just fails. It can't extrapolate very widely. As a human being, we can do a lot of things. So the current algorithms that we have, they can be very good, but on a very narrow topic. They are not general. So that's why some people say we need to develop artificial general intelligence. So they put the word G in it. So currently, artificial intelligence is very narrow. They only do one task, but humans can learn any task, and we are really good at it. And the answer to this question is only future can answer that, not us.
Sorry for the interruption.
No, it's
apart
finished.
from artificial
Finished.
intelligence, okay. Apart from artificial intelligence, can you create a human level intelligence by altering other organisms by our genes? So, for example, extracting our gene like that that encodes for the proteins. So, like makes the skull bigger so that the brain can
you mean genetic
be bigger in the
engineering?
size. Yeah, genetic engineering for like we can extract this gene from humans and insert it to other organisms, and so we have a human level intelligence.
Yeah. This is a very nice proposal. But so you mean like we already know the initial state of our brain is built by our genes. So if you study embryology, your brain, like the neurons, I don't remember correctly, but your genes actually send signals to different parts of neurons inside your body to specialize. So it sends signals to the neurons inside or to specialize to become neurons. And what you are saying, can we find these genes and we can manipulate them so that we can make them to produce more neurons, less neurons? And even if we understand that, we can replicate these genes inside our computers to do the same. In theory, why not? But in practice, we still actually do not know what genes are. I mean, we know, but not everything. We don't know what genes are actually producing what exact thing. It's very, very complex. So genetics is still an active area under research. And sometimes you hear papers telling you, oh, we found a gene that controls human intelligence. Oh, we found, these are new things. But the idea is that how can you implement that? In practice, it's very, very difficult. In theory, yes, why not? Why not? Everything is information processing. Everything is information. So if you learn all the information, then why you can reuse them? So any more questions?
Thank you, Kagito, for your nice presentation. It was really an amazing presentation. We are all interested.
Thank you.
I have one question. Yes, and many evolutionary biologists, they say that the main critical difference between the human and other animals, that we as humans possess advanced and speaking centers in our brain. And the most critical difference between human intelligence and other animal intelligence, that we can speak in different languages. I want to know your opinion about that.
Yes, so basically, if you compare your brain with other, or actually, if you compare any organ, any body organ with any animal, most of the animals have bigger organs than you. If you have a heart, many animals have bigger heart than you, bigger muscles. But when you come to the brain, this is the area when no animal can match us. Even though our body is way smaller than, let's say, elephant, but then our brain comparatively to our body is very brain. So the part of our brain that is even much bigger than is called frontal lobe. So the frontal region of our brain. So the left side of our brain, just a little bit behind the frontal lobe, there is an area called Broca's area, which controls our speech. And it's actually way more developed in humans. And then so many people contribute that, but basically you can't say animals don't have intelligence. So we talked about intelligence is a compressed form of learning. Many animals can actually generalize. They can do a lot of things. They can, so I am not saying that we are intelligence, animals are not intelligent. No. Animals are intelligent and we are intelligent. The question is that why we can do more, why we are more creative. And you are right, we become more creative because we use our language effectively, because you can see language is a sort of signal transmission. So you can think of us as a neurons, but now sending signals through our mouth. And then we can build communities. So language actually made us possible to make communities. And then again, writing was another thing that I am sure it makes us civilization to appear, because writing increases your working memory. You know that you can't hold more than 7 numbers in your brain, but if you have a paper, you can hold many things. I mean, you can solve mathematics. So writing actually helps you to expand your working memory, because you can hold information on the paper and then you can scan it and try to extrapolate and interpolate. But if you do not have paper and pen, you have to hold it inside your brain, which is limited. So writing actually another contributor to make us to make civilization happens. So you can think of language and writing as a tools that helped us to become more intelligent. Yes, but you can't say animals have no intelligence.
Thank you very much, Doctor, for your great explanation.
No, not at all.
We have some questions. I will read it for you, Doctor.
Yes.
From Yadi, like she or he says, for someone who's interested in cognitive neuroscience, would it be better for them to study medicine or software engineering?
Well, if it is cognitive, then yeah, medicine is really good. Pay too much attention to psychology and psychiatry subjects because they are very related. But if you want computational neuroscience, then yeah, software is a better path, software engineering. But cognitive neuroscience, I mean, my topic was cognitive. I worked on fMRI. Functional MRI is a very tough topic. It requires from you to do data analysis. Data analysis, I mean, there are some softwares, you just read the tutorials and documentation, you can learn them. So they are softwares to analyze the brain data. So you really need, but you don't have to be majored at a software college. I mean, medicine is.
We have another question from Tahsin. He says, like, how do you know there are 100 billion neurons? He says he's just curious about this.
Yeah.
Do they just count them?
Yeah. They count them, but not all the neurons. So you can do that by yourself. So take a slide of the brain take a 1 millimeter slide, 1 millimeter cubic. I mean, this is still big. Even in 1 millimeter cubic, there are millions. Sorry, but take a microscope and just try to count a small portion, uh, and then everything is, you just multiply that. And so if you saw in a small microscopic area, you found like 100 neurons, and then you can easily say, okay, well, how many neurons I have inside the entire brain. So if 1 millimeter cubic contains like 1 million neuron, so you can calculate how much millimeter cube your head is. You just have a tape and measure and some math, and then you multiply that. You can easily reach the conclusion that we have 100 billion neurons.
We have a question from Bear. He says, apart from answering the why questions, is there any advice for widening the learning process?
Well, if somebody is a child, there is a lot of chance, to be quite honest, from 1 year to 5 years, because the brain, as you know, children have small head, but then their head grows, and then 5 years their head stops growing. So our head is currently doesn't become bigger. That means like children's head, their neurons are very plastic. They are actively making a lot of connections because the children wants to know the environment. So it's the stage that you can make it the children more intelligent by giving them a stimulating environment. As an environment that has challenging is thinking environment, an active child that goes up, and so do not make. I mean, probably the electronic devices nowadays. You see many children are actually very good at using electronic devices. They are like a double-edged sword. So at some point, it makes the intelligence of the child more, because it challenges the child to learn a lot. But then if the child uses that device a lot, it also makes the intelligence of the child very focused on one thing. We do not want that. We want a general intelligence. Humans are really good at general intelligence. So a lot of stimulating tasks. But after the childhood, I really can't think anything better than the answering why question, because our neurons will become really, really slow at recruit. We will become really bad at recruiting new neurons to new tasks. But we are still good at connecting things together because our hippocampus is still very active.
Okay, we have also another question from Lwqman. She says, is it possible that we improve intelligence in already existing humans without a process of learning? Like meaning genetically alter the human brain to do better?
Yeah. This is, in theory, why not? Like, as I told you, if you design, so we have 100 billion neurons. If somebody finds out that it can make, let's say, I mean, well, by intelligence, it means that you want to solve a task. Otherwise, what's the importance of intelligence? You want to solve a task, you want to extrapolate, you want to predict the future. So we still don't know what's the ultimate network. What's the ultimate network that can predict? Does this network exist? I really don't know if a network exists that can solve anything in the entire universe. So to have this network, you must have a human being that have visited all the planets, everything in the world, and its brain is adapted to everything. So currently, in theory, yes. So the answer to the question, but in practice, this is very, very difficult. Designing networks is very difficult, but learning is easy. Learning, you just have a randomly assigned network, and then you just learn from the experience. That's just like the examples that I gave you, the parliament example. Like if you make a mistake, then your brain will penalize the bad neurons, the connections. If you made a good thing, then it will reward them by making more connections. So your brain reforms itself based on what you experience, and that's learning. And intelligence is also a form of learning, as I said, compressed learning.
So, like, personally, I have another question about emotional intelligence.
Yeah.
So, like, how people predict other people's behavior so they can respond without any what do you call rejection. So you want to be acceptable.
Yeah.
So if you want to talk about some emotional
So
intelligence, we'll be grateful.
you know what the primary purpose of our brain is to just make us survive. Actually, it makes us survive, and to survive in the environment, you need to predict. You need to be able to predict what comes. All obviously we can't predict future 100%, but I can predict relatively. I can predict that after this seminar I may check my emails, and after that I may go to sleep and check read some books and stuff. So I can predict some stuff, but I can't predict them 100% because something may happen. So our brain constantly predicts, and it's constantly right. And because predicting future makes us survive better. So emotional intelligence is also something like that. Your brain tries to predict the behavior of others. Like, am I accepted by this one or not? Is he becoming angry if I say that or not? So you are trying to go to predict, and based on your previous experience. So you have, let's say you have memorized some experience. As I say, without memorizing, you don't have intelligence, but try to upon your memorization, try to make a lot of connections. So based on your previous memorization, you say, oh, if I do this, I'm sure that someone will become happy. So that means you are emotionally more intelligent because your predictions become better. Some people are really good at that. They really predict what others response. How should they do that to make? I mean, some people are actually very intelligent to make posts that gets a lot of likes. So this is a kind of emotional intelligence. So yes, our brain is capable to that, but it's all related to predicting. Your brain constantly predict, what should I do to make this person more acceptable, survive in the environment, get a mate, reproduce, pass genes to other children. So your brain constantly trying to predict the futures for you that makes you survive in this harsh environment. And sometimes it succeeds, sometimes it fails. And when it fails, it tries to learn from the errors, because you think about, oh, why did I do this error? So your brain subconsciously penalizes all the bad decisions. Hopefully next time you have learned that something new. I mean, you do not repeat that because your brain have penalized the neurons that have made decisions. So next time when you think about doing that, you won't do that, because the connections will not send signals to those neurons, or will inhibit them using inhibitory neurons. It will send signals to different decisions. So you try different decisions. Most of the time you don't know what happens. So most of your actions probably random, but you learn from your experience, and your brain tries to do that.
We have another question from Tahsin. We can recalling the other question, how we know, like, there are 100 billion neurons in our brain. He says, he asks, is it necessary that the same amount of neurons are in every micro areas of brain? That's the like.
Oh, no. So when I say 100 billion neurons, it doesn't mean that this is an estimation. It doesn't mean that every human being had 100 billion. It could be 1 million more, 1 million less, but that's a very, very close number. That's a very, because they have calculated these neurons inside a microscope in a small region. And then they examined a lot of areas of the brain. Of course, some areas have more neurons than others. For example, cerebellum is a very, very small organ. It's very, very compressed. And even though cerebellum is not associated with intelligence a lot, it has so many neurons, but it coordinates your movement. So if you have a problem in your cerebellum, your movement will be not very good. So the answer to that is not exactly everybody have 100 billion neurons, but that's a good estimation. That's a close estimation.
Like, he still talks about numbers, Tahsin. It says, how studies show that there are 15,000 synapses per neuron in a 3-year-old child. Like, how did they count synapses?
Well, I mean, if you are second stage medical students, you have a subject called histology, and you should try that. You should try to look at the microscope and try to. Honestly, I did second year, and I don't see a lot of connections because my eye is not good as Raymond Cajal, but people are using electronic microscopes nowadays, and they actually use computers to count that. So computers nowadays can find a lot of things. So just like they can find your faces, they can also find the connections. So this process is actually nowadays automated. So they made the computers according to my knowledge, like there is a big project in Europe, like they scanned a brain of somebody, not scanned, like it's a real brain from someone who died, and they froze the brain, and they just use lasers and a lot of sensors to count all the neurons inside regions. So nowadays it's very they use more very advanced techniques to do that. But you can do that. I mean, if you next time in the histology department, just try to tell them, give you a slide of a brain tissue, and look if you can count neurons and if you can count the connections. If you have a good eye, you may be able to do that. But keep in your mind, what you see in a slide is a one dimension, is a 2 dimension. You know that the brain is 3 dimension. So if you count the number of connections, you should you should cube them. You should multiply them 3 times. You should take the cubic number. So if you count, let's say 10 connections, so 10 qubits is 1000. Do you know what I mean? So you should use some mathematics to count how much connections in a 3D neuron exist.
We have a question from an anonymous member participant, like evolution of intelligence. Are we intelligent from our ancestor, like a lot? Is there any data or evidence that proves that we are more intelligent and like in a huge amount? Maybe this person doesn't believe that our ancestors from like our cousins are chimpanzee and others, but like what do you have on the evolution of intelligence and the evolution of brain?
Yeah, this is an interesting topic. We know that the people may become more intelligent with time, but as I told you, sometimes intelligence is not good. Sometimes it makes you socially awkward because it makes you feel more isolated, and this will be bad for reproduction. Being isolated is bad for reproduction. So this means like the natural selection will, if you are more intelligent, it makes you less able to reproduce, which is bad. So I'm saying that in the natural selection will bring human up to one level that thinks is good for survival. About our ancestors, actually some people say that our ancient ancestors, maybe Neanderthals, I don't know, like Homo sapiens, early Homo sapiens, they probably were more intelligent than us as individually. What we become socially more intelligent. So let me give you a fly may be more intelligent individually than a bee. Bees are very intelligent in community. If you take community as a whole, bees are more intelligent because they can do, as a community, they can do a lot of amazing things. But a fly can't do anything because it's individually is more intelligent. It can survive. You can't kill it. But collectively, flies together are not intelligent because they can't go. And humans like that. Our ancestors probably were more intelligent individually, because they have to. They were in jungle. They have to survive from predators. They have to endure hot, cold weather. The environment was very challenging. Everything was a poison around them. So they have to be individually very intelligent to survive. Nowadays, we live in a very relaxed environment. Computers calculate everything for us, but we are socially, collectively, it's called collective intelligence. We are socially becoming more intelligent. And by that, I'm saying like we I am as a myself. You will become a doctor. You will be specialized in one topic. Somebody else become engineer. So this specializations makes us as a community way more intelligent, and that's why as a community civilization happens. But individually, if you go back to the jungle, you are on your own. Your ancestor may be way more intelligent to protect, unless you have the current tools. So if you bring the current tools with you, you will be survive better, because you relied on the collective intelligence. Many people think that if they go back, they can actually invent everything but that's not true. Believe me, if you go back in time, you probably can't invent how firing works. You probably, because nowadays everything is available. You don't need to reinvent the wheel. You need to learn from others.
Thanks, Doctor. We have another question from Muhammad Shwan. He thanks you for this presentation, and he says, how are memories stored and retrieved?
Yes. So this is an interesting topic. Actually, most of my research was how memories are encoded. So basically, the memories are encoded inside neurons. So not inside neurons. So any neuron, it can be seen as a placeholder for your memory. So let's say you want to remember your if you Google search grandmother neurons, you'll find that you may have a neuron for any topic. For example, if somebody says mother, your mother, there is a neuron inside your brain that has been recruited to fire, because that neuron is connected to all the features of your mother, like her face, everything. So when you see your mother's face, all these neurons fire, and they are specialized to recognize your mother. So basically, the answer to that, your memory is already encoded into the network. So you can see the network which I talked about as your memory store. Let me show you the network again so that you know what I mean. So this network is your memory, actually. So these neurons, they encode the connections, they encode the relations between your different memories. But each individual neurons, they encode the informations, whether the word intelligence, the mother's face, father's face, the wall, the door, any topic you think of, they should have a neuron inside their brain to recruit. And you have 100 billion neurons. So there is a space to memorize a lot of things. But my advice to you, do not memorize a lot of things. If you memorize that, try to make connections as well. Because if you memorize without connections, it means that you're just memorizing things. You can't extrapolate and interpolate. Try to recruit neurons, memorize by that, but then try to make connections with already previous knowledge that you have by answering why question.
Okay, we have another question. Is it true that some brains are bigger than some others for the same age? Like, it is then, what is the relationship between the size of the brain and intelligence?
Yeah.
Sure,
well, there are some confusions. Yes, there are variations. Just like some people have bigger eyes, some people have smaller nose. So it doesn't make sense to say no. The size of the brain is all fixed. There is variation. Some people have bigger brains, some people have smaller brain, but that doesn't mean the smaller brain is less capable, because as I told you, these variations are so small they can't account for you. So if you remember the competition between the rabbit and the turtle, so the turtle is more persistent. It can win the racing competition. And the same thing is true. It may be that for one aspect you are not good, but there are so many other aspects that you are good. Now, as people who have bigger bodies, they usually have bigger brains as well, because they need more brains to control all. So what's important is the brain body ratio, not the absolute size of the brain. Generally, they told you that male brain is bigger than female brain. That's simply because male body is bigger than female. So as a male, you have bigger bodies usually. But that doesn't mean that if a female have bigger body, they have also bigger brain, because many parts of your brain are actually controlling the sensory organs in your hand, in your feet. So if you have a bigger body, you should have bigger brain. But that doesn't mean all your brain is recruited for intelligence thinking, because the thing that I didn't talk about today is compartmentalizing the brain regions, like telling you, oh, this region is doing that, this region is doing that, because this is out of our topic. But bigger brains just means that you have some regions bigger because your body is bigger.
One more question. Tahsin asks, what do you think of quantum therapy? How does it affect on the subconscious mind? How much do you believe in such a type of alternative medicine, quantum therapy?
I really, this is the first time I hear this topic, to be quite honest. I will read about it, but currently I have no comment. I don't know anything about it. But it looks like to be that like a propaganda, to be quite honest. I mean, the word looks like to me like a propaganda word, because quantum is quantum. Quantum physics is something totally different.
Thank you, dear doctor, for this great way of explanation.
Thank you. Thanks for all the attendance. I appreciate that, and hopefully it was a useful presentation.
Thank you, dear doctor. We made you tired. Thank you.
No, not at all. Not at all. Thank you.
Thank you.